Do you own a mirrorless camera or a DSLR and you want to get into photography and you're wondering what is the very first thing that you should learn? Well, it's the dial MASP. Let's talk about it. Check this out. What's up, guys? Myung here from Camera to Freedom. So, I just want to share the very basic knowledge of photography. This is the very first thing that you should learn in photography in case you are right now getting into photography. You got yourself a camera, you love photography, and now you want to just stop using the automatic mode, which the automatic mode is awesome. It does great taking photos, but now you want to take control of what kind of photos that you're gonna take. So let's get into it. MASP, that's what we're gonna go through. The very first thing that we wanna talk about is what the letter A stands for. It stands for aperture. It's read as an F, meaning F stop. F stands for focal length. And it's really about how much light to bring into the sensor to get your photo. So I'm going to show you my manual lens. And when I turn my aperture ring, you can see how big the aperture ring opens and closes. And of course, if you're using a mirrorless and you're using a regular standard lens, then you're using a dial to open and close your lens. F for a prime lens like this, and f1.8 will open up this big, and f22 will close the hole this small. So as you can see, it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger as you f22, 21, 20, and all the way to f1.8, all the way to f1.2, and so on. So the two thing that aperture controls is how much light to bring into your camera and also how much blurry bokeh that you want in the background. So that's the two things that you control. So first off, how much light? I mean, it's pretty obvious that if the ring is wide open, a lot of light could come through. Just like how water flows through a bigger hole, a lot can come through. And if you close it, not that much light could come through. So that's how you control how bright and how dark your photo can be. So obviously when we're shooting in a semi-dark environment like my room right here, I want my aperture to be this big. And if I'm shooting outside in a very sunny day, I want that aperture hole to be very small so that not too much light comes in. Right? So that's a basic thought about it. But the main control of the aperture is just how much blurriness, the bokeh, you want in the background. When I'm shooting a subject, I love photos with the background being super blurry. Like, right, you could shoot as a couple in front of a trash can and a landfill, but if you just blur out the heck of the background, the photo will look amazing. So I kind of love that. But if you love the background, if you actually want the viewer to see what the background really is, you could definitely bring the aperture down to a 10, even to a 22 if the lighting is correct, and so on. So that's the cool thing about the aperture control. And I use it all the time, especially on weddings when I need to shoot things that's at different lighting. Look to the left and it's dark here, and look to the right, it's bright here, and I don't have time to constantly set my manual setting. I leave it on aperture and I'm just blasting away. Dark, boom, and it does a great job giving me that photo that I'm looking for with that super blurry background. So the next mode that we should talk about is S for shutter. Shutter, I'm going to show you what shutter is. You're going to see a door that closes. That's that shutter door. And what that does is just like how a door opening and letting so much water in, it's same thing as like water and light. If you open up the shutter for about a second, then of course a lot of light will come in. But if you open that shutter close and open and close real quick, then just a very small enough light comes in. So basically, if you were shooting outdoors and it's super sunny, you want that shutter to open and close real quick, right? 8 thousandths of a second, 4,000, way up there, so that least amount of light come in so you get the properly exposed photo. But if you're in a dark area like this, you want that shutter to kind of open 60th of a second. And if you want to really bring in a lot of light because you're shooting at nighttime, maybe you want to open up for a full second. The real reason why you want to use that S mode is so that you control the motion of the photo. So that's when you could really have fun with photography. If you shoot a water dropping, you could have your camera at like 2 thousandths of a second, and it'll catch that water right in midair, or any kind of emotion right in midair. There's crazy cameras out there that open the shutter and close so quick that it could capture a bullet going, and it'll freeze right in the middle. So that's really cool about shutter. And you get to have fun with shutter by, let's say you got a couple in the middle and they're kissing, and you leave the shutter open for about a second, and everybody else in the background is moving around. Then everyone is blurry while the person in the middle is of course frozen, since they were, still during that 1 second shot. Maybe you're shooting a waterfall, and when the waterfalls, instead of capturing in midair and seeing all the water drops, maybe you want it to look like just a cream, and it just smooths out and there's no ripples, everything just looks super smooth, and that makes an amazing landscape waterfall type of photos. So that's really cool. So you could really have fun on the kind of motion you want in your photography, and it works together with the aperture, right? So you have that shutter, you're using the dial to change the shutter. You want it to be 1 second, to be open for about a second. It'll automatically adjust how big that aperture should be, whether it's big or small, to make sure that just the right amount of light goes into your camera to get to get the properly exposed photos that you're looking for. And of course, it's not 100%. Sometimes the exposure of the final outcome isn't perfect. So that's when you could make final little tweaks to make sure that the photo is exactly what you're looking for and what you're trying to take. So that's really cool about shutters. All right, so the next mode that we're going to learn is P. P is for program auto, and that's the next level up from fully auto. So there's fully auto with a green icon, right? Takes amazing photos. You don't have to think twice about anything. But maybe you want to still have that automatic mode, but still be able to control some things, right? Some things from your camera. So the program auto will allow you to change a combination of which aperture you want, and then what shutter it's going to be, and so on. But it will also give you an ability to control your ISO, control your exposure, white balance, your flash power. Whereas automatic, you can't change nothing. Everything just does on its own. It'll pop up a flash if your camera has one, if it needs it, and just doesn't let you do anything. But the program auto gives you that flexibility of being still be able to shoot in automatic mode, where you don't have to think about the aperture and shutter. And then now you can kind of have fun with like what kind of white balance you want, the exposure, how bright you want that to be, how darker you want that to be. Maybe you want to use a flash, and so on. So that's kind of a fun thing to use. That's another mode that's safe to use if you're like in a rush and you're worried about what setting to be in and you don't know. Pop into program auto, and you get to just get some safe, properly exposed photos. So finally, we gotta talk about the best part of the camera, which is M for manual. That is the best part of your camera. Your camera is made for the manual mode, and that's what you should definitely learn first, right? You got all these cool dials and everything is kind of semi-automatic, but when you are using manual mode, you just have to control everything manually. The cool thing about that is that you can see a little meter on the bottom of your viewfinder, and then you'll see a little bar that'll go to the other one side, which means it's too bright, and then it'll kind of go to the other side, which means it's too dark. And then right when it comes to the middle, you'll actually see it move. Then you know it's a perfect setting, right? So you can't cheat. You can't go to like a P mode, aperture mode, shutter mode, and then look at your camera setting because it does a good exposure, and then go to manual and then use that same setting. And that's a great way to learn, by the way. This is the way I take photos, and it's, to me, like a good way to approach photography when you're taking a photo. So the first thing you want to think about in manual mode is ISO. What ISO are you in? Always have a habit of keeping your camera's ISO as low as possible. 100, 200, average, because the lower the ISO, the more perfect, clear your photos look. Higher the ISO, you're gonna start to see grains. I have some cameras that if your ISO is all the way to like just 800, to 900, then you start seeing grains and it just starts looking funky. Whereas I do have some cameras like my Z6, I could go up to like 4000 ISO, and it does great. It's amazing. It's still very clear. So that's one thing you want to change and make sure when you're first thinking about photography. So the second thing that you want to think about is the aperture. So you're still in manual mode. Now you get to control what kind of aperture that you want. Do you want the background to be blurry? If so, open up the aperture as big as possible, right? I got this lens over here. It's open up at 1.8. So open it up as big as possible. Now the third thing to think about is the shutter. How long are you gonna keep that shutter open so that your light is properly exposed? So once you're set to ISO, let's say ISO 200, your aperture is at 1.8. Now you get to control the shutter manually so that your photo is properly exposed, and you could see the little meter on the bottom to tell you as you're moving it up and down that, okay, this is getting too dark. That 1,000th of a second, this is becoming way too dark. 60th of a second, that's way too bright. And you kind of find that the medium where the bar becomes around the middle and the photo is now properly exposed. So it gets kind of fun when you shoot in manual mode. All right, guys, that concludes our little video. If you watched all the way, I thank you so much. And please hit the subscribe button. I really appreciate you. And if you want to get some free training videos and cool information and things like that, hook me up with your email address at cameratofreedom.com and I will send you some cool stuff. And till then, I'll see you next time. Just like what he said. Bye.